A highly successful boss, firm in his conviction that hard work begets deserved rewards, always ensured his employees were well compensated for their efforts. He never delved into their lives post-clockout until one pivotal evening. A diligent employee lingered late, discreetly accepting a takeout container. Unbeknownst to her, he followed her home that night, and what he witnessed utterly shattered his preconceptions about work, success, and the sheer grit of survival. For the first time he questioned if hard work alone was truly enough. Malcolm Reed had forged his empire from the ground up, devoid of inherited wealth, a safety net, or any form of assistance. His success was solely sculpted by unyielding hard work, countless sleepless nights, and an unwavering belief in discipline as the bedrock of achievement. Reed Logistics, his brainchild, began as a solitary trucking venture in Atlanta, Georgia. Over the years, it blossomed into an industry titan, its fleets traversing the entire nation. People held him in high regard, some even in fear. He was renowned for his punctuality, his demanding yet fair approach to employees. At Reed Logistics, the unspoken rule was simple: you work to win. That was the only path. However, even a man of Malcolm's resolute convictions possessed blind spots. That night, as he sat in his glass-walled office, meticulously reviewing the quarter's performance metrics, something beyond his immediate focus caught his eye. The building was largely deserted, save for the cleaning crew making their rounds. Yet in the subdued glow of the break room down the hall, a lone figure remained: Naomi Hayes. He recognized her, though not intimately. She was the quintessential employee, quiet, diligent, always on task, never requiring a second prompt. If overtime arose, she embraced it. If shifts needed covering, she was there. The kind of employee every boss desired, the kind who sought no favors. Which was precisely why his next observation felt so discordant. Naomi stood by the food counter, her posture tentative, shifting her weight as if grappling with whether she should even be there. The cafeteria had closed hours prior. Still, she approached the cook, a man Malcolm barely knew but recognized from his occasional late-night coffee runs. Their exchange was brief, hushed, too faint for Malcolm to discern. But the way the cook's brow furrowed, his momentary hesitation before finally retrieving a takeout container from beneath the counter, provided Malcolm with all the insight he needed. Naomi's shoulders visibly relaxed in what appeared to be profound relief as she murmured a quick, "Thank you," swiftly tucking the container into her oversized tote bag before casting a furtive glance around, checking for witnesses. Then she pivoted, walking briskly towards the exit, head bowed, her pace hurried but resolute. Malcolm leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, gazing at the now empty cafeteria. He wasn't the kind of boss who meddled in his employees' private lives. That wasn't his management philosophy. You worked hard, you got paid, simple fare. Yet Naomi worked more than most, sometimes pulling double, even triple shifts. If anyone should have been able to afford a meal, it was her. So why the clandestine request? The thought gnawed at him, unsettling him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. Perhaps it was nothing. Maybe she'd simply forgotten her wallet, or perhaps she was saving for something significant. Maybe it wasn't his concern. Yet as he returned to his reports, the numbers on the screen blurred, rendered meaningless. His mind fixated solely on that singular image. Naomi stowing a takeout container in her bag as if it were contraband. And what if there was more to it? Malcolm wasn't an impulsive man. His decisions weren't swayed by fleeting emotions. But as he rose, rolling up his sleeves, his feet moved independently of his logic. By the time he stepped outside, the night air was cool, crisp, and biting. Naomi was already a distant figure, walking towards the nearest bus stop. No car keys, no waiting ride, just her and the burden on her back. Malcolm hesitated. This was an invasion of privacy. And yet, when the next bus arrived and Naomi boarded, he found himself doing the same. The bus rattled forward, its dim overhead lights flickering intermittently, casting fleeting, harsh white flashes across the mostly empty seats. Malcolm settled towards the rear, far enough to remain inconspicuous but close enough to observe Naomi. She had taken a seat near the middle, her posture slumped, her head resting against the cold window. She looked utterly exhausted, not the kind of weariness that sleep could remedy, but a profound fatigue that permeated the bones, the kind that stemmed from carrying too much for too long. The city blurred outside, the neon glow of gas stations, the warmly lit windows of late-night diners, the endless stream of headlights stretching down the highway. But as the bus ventured further from the business district, the landscape shifted. Buildings grew smaller, older. Streets darkened, sidewalks cracked and uneven. Storefronts gave way to boarded-up windows and chain-link fences. Malcolm realized then that he had never truly ventured into this part of Atlanta. It existed within the same city on the same maps, yet it was an entirely different world. Naomi barely stirred. She didn't check her phone, didn't fidget. She simply stared out the window with a quiet acceptance that stirred a profound unease within him. How many nights had she done this? How many times had she ridden this same bus, taken this identical route home after shifts that should have been impossible? The bus slowed. Naomi pulled the stop cord without hesitation, as if it were 1,000 times practiced ritual. As the doors hissed open, she adjusted the strap of her tote bag, pulled her thin jacket tighter around her and stepped onto the sidewalk. Malcolm hesitated. This was pushing boundaries. But his feet continued to move. He exited a few paces behind her, maintaining his distance, his hands thrust into the pockets of his tailored coat. The air smelled of rain on pavement, damp and heavy. Streetlights flickered, some working, some not. The houses here weren't abandoned, but they weren't well maintained either. Paint peeled from siding, mailboxes leaned at odd angles. The kind of place where expectations were low, where survival superseded comfort. Naomi walked with purpose, even in her exhaustion. She turned a corner, past a row of rusted railings and dimly lit porches, until she reached a small apartment complex, clearly past its prime. She ascended the stairs to the second floor, retrieved her keys and pushed open the door. Malcolm slowed his steps, stopping just before the building. Through the thin yellowed curtains he saw it. The apartment was sparse, not the bareness of someone just moved in, but the emptiness of someone who had lived with nothing for a long time. No couch, no dining table, no signs of comfort. Just a single mattress on the floor, a few blankets, a plastic crate with neatly folded clothes stacked on top. And then two small heads peeked out from beside the mattress, children. Malcolm's stomach tightened. Naomi knelt beside them, her movements slow but deliberate, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten the instant she saw their faces. She placed the takeout container on the floor, opening it with gentle care as if it were something fragile. The children, a boy and a girl no older than 5 or 6, scooted forward immediately, eyes wide, movements quick. Not the casual reach of kids grabbing a snack, but the urgent hunger that stemmed from prolonged waiting. She divided the meal between them, ensuring each received an equal share, but she herself did not eat. She simply watched. Malcolm stood there, the gravity of the moment pressing down on him. He had dedicated years to building a business, pushing employees to work harder, faster, longer. But had he ever truly seen them? Had he ever paused to consider what transpired after they clocked out? Naomi wasn't merely working double shifts, she was surviving them. A gust of wind swept down the street, rattling a loose metal sign nearby. Malcolm took a step back, his mind racing, his chest tight. He needed to leave. This wasn't his concern. He had already seen too much. But as he turned, a small voice cut through the night. "Mommy, are we going to have breakfast tomorrow?" Malcolm froze. Naomi hesitated for just a second. Then with quiet certainty she smoothed her daughter's curls back from her face and whispered, "Of course, baby. I'll figure it out." She smiled, but Malcolm recognized it for what it was, a facade, a fragile shield designed to comfort another, not herself. And just like that, something within him shifted. Because this wasn't merely an unfortunate situation. This was a broken system. And for the first time he wasn't sure if hard work alone was enough to mend it. The following morning, Malcolm sat at his desk, staring at his laptop screen. The numbers before him blurred into meaningless shapes. For the first time in years, work failed to capture his focus. His mind was elsewhere. In a dimly lit apartment on a cold floor, watching 2 hungry children eat from a takeout container their mother had to beg for. He had spent the night dissecting it, attempting to rationalize, trying to convince himself he had no obligation to intervene. Naomi had a job, she worked hard, he paid his employees fairly. If she struggled, that wasn't on him. That was life, the way the world operated. Except that logic now felt hollow. A soft knock at his office door brought him back. His assistant peered inside, her expression unreadable. "Naomi Hayes is here to see you," she announced. Malcolm straightened, his expression settling into something neutral. He had spent the past hour debating whether he should summon her, wondering if there was a way to address what he'd witnessed without making her defensive. But now she was here of her own volition. That carried significance. Send her in. The door opened and Naomi stepped inside, moving as if bracing for impact. She looked as exhausted as she had the previous night, but now there was something else in her eyes. A quiet weariness, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. She sat across from him, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her posture too rigid, too controlled. You wanted to see me, sir? Her voice was steady, professional, devoid of emotion. Malcolm studied her for a long moment, pondering how to begin. He had rehearsed a dozen different approaches, but now, sitting across from her, none of them felt right. So finally he simply stated, I saw you last night. Naomi stiffened. It was slight, barely perceptible, but Malcolm caught it. Excuse me. I followed you home. The words emerged even, careful, but there was no gentle way to say it. Her reaction was instantaneous. A sharp intake of breath, a flicker of something across her face, confusion, then anger, then something colder. Her fingers curled into fists, but she didn't move, didn't lash out. I don't understand, she said, but her voice had changed. It wasn't steady anymore. It was tight, controlled, like someone trying to suppress panic. I saw you take that food home, Malcolm continued, keeping his voice calm, steady, giving her space. I saw your apartment. Your kids. Her breath hitched, and just like that the wall rose. Her expression shuttered, her shoulders squared, and suddenly the woman sitting before him wasn't just Naomi Hayes, his employee. She was a mother protecting her children, a fighter refusing to break, someone who had navigated this conversation before and knew precisely how to manage it. This isn't. She began, shaking her head, already preparing her defense. I don't need. I'm not here to judge you, Malcolm interrupted, leaning forward slightly. And I'm not here to pity you either. Naomi looked at him then, truly looked at him, as if attempting to ascertain his sincerity. She was accustomed to dismissal, to being told to work harder, to people seeing a problem instead of a person. I'm here because I should have seen it sooner, Malcolm said, and I want to fix it. Naomi swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as if to prevent revealing too much. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Yes, I do, Malcolm said firmly. Silence settled between them, thick and heavy. For the first time she had no retort. Malcolm reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a thick envelope, and slid it across the desk towards her. Naomi's eyes flicked to it but remained still. This isn't charity, Malcolm stated before she could protest. This is an investment, in you, in the people who make this company run. She didn't reach for it. I want to raise wages, he continued, provide better hours, childcare support, emergency assistance. His voice was steady, but now there was urgency in it, something raw, something real. I need your help to do it the right way, to ensure no one else has to go home the way you did last night. Naomi's lips parted, but no words emerged. Her fingers hovered over the envelope, then recoiled as if burned. Why? She finally asked. It wasn't accusatory, it wasn't doubtful. It was simply weary. Malcolm exhaled. Because I built this company, he said, and I let people fall through the cracks. I refuse to let that happen again. Naomi stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached forward, her fingers grazing the envelope before gripping it tightly. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wasn't accustomed to accepting help. She wasn't accustomed to anyone even offering it. Malcolm met her gaze, his own unwavering. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Naomi swallowed hard, then finally she nodded. A moment later she stood, shoulders squaring as she held the envelope to her chest. And for the first time in a long time she allowed herself to hope. Malcolm watched her walk out, something solid and unyielding settling deep in his bones. This wasn't just about mending a company. This was about transforming lives. And he was just getting started. The door clicked shut behind Naomi, leaving Malcolm alone in the silence of his office. He exhaled slowly and steadily, his hands pressed flat against the desk as he stared at the space where she had just been. Something inside him felt different, something weighty, something permanent. There was no turning back from this. The realization settled deep in his chest, heavier than he expected. He had spent years believing that hard work was the panacea for everything, that success was a simple equation. Effort in, results out. But last night had shattered that belief. Naomi had done everything right. She worked more than most, she never asked for help. And still she had to beg for a meal. That wasn't her failure, that was his. Malcolm let out a sharp breath, pushing back from his desk. His office, once a symbol of everything he had built, suddenly felt suffocating. He needed action, a plan, a solution. His fingers moved instinctively, dialing a number he rarely used. The call barely rang before a sharp, professional voice answered. Malcolm. Lisa Carter, his chief financial officer, greeted, her tone clipped. Didn't expect to hear from you before our board meeting next week. What's on your mind? Malcolm didn't hesitate. I need to talk payroll, benefits, emergency assistance programs. And I need to talk about it today. There was a pause on the line, then a low exhale. You're not the type to make impulsive decisions, Malcolm, Lisa said carefully. What happened? Malcolm's jaw clenched. He wasn't sure he could explain it. The weight in his chest, the way Naomi's quiet exhaustion had lodged in his mind like an unyielding splinter. But he had built this company with Lisa from the ground up. If anyone would understand, it was her. Let's just say I finally saw something I should have seen a long time ago. Another pause, then the sound of keys clicking on a keyboard. All right, Lisa said. Tell me what you're thinking. Malcolm inhaled deeply, forcing his thoughts into something structured, something tangible. We need to raise wages, he began, his voice firm. I don't care how we do it, but we need to make it happen. And not just a couple of cents to keep up with inflation. I mean something real, something that actually changes lives. Lisa let out a low hum, the kind that told him she was already running numbers in her head. That's a big shift, Malcolm. We've got investors watching margins. There's going to be pushback. Let them push, Malcolm said. We're a logistics company, Lisa. We move product, we keep the supply chain alive. And the only reason we do it so damn well is because of the people on the ground. The ones in the warehouses, the ones in the trucks, the ones who pull 16-hour shifts and don't complain. I built this company on the belief that hard work pays off. But what if it doesn't? What if we're taking more than we're giving? Lisa didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice had shifted, no longer skeptical but thoughtful, calculating. You're serious about this? Dead serious. Another pause, then more typing. All right, Lisa said, then let's do it. We'll start with the numbers. I'll put together models on wage increases, see where we can shift funds without gutting the bottom line. You want to talk benefits too? Yes, Malcolm said immediately. Childcare assistance, emergency support, maybe even tuition help for people who want to move up. I don't want band-aid fixes, Lisa. I want long-term solutions. Lisa let out a quiet laugh, not mocking but surprised, maybe even impressed. Well, damn. Looks like somebody had a wake-up call. Malcolm rubbed a hand over his jaw, exhaling through his nose. Yeah, something like that. All right, Lisa said. Give me a few hours. I'll have a preliminary report by the end of the day. But Malcolm, if we do this, it's going to be a fight, right? The board, the investors, even some of the managers, they're not all going to be on your side. Malcolm's grip tightened around his phone. He thought of Naomi sitting in his office, her hands clenched in her lap, her voice barely above a whisper when she said, You don't have to do this. Then we fight, Malcolm said. Lisa chuckled. Damn right we do. I'll call you when I have numbers. The line went dead. Malcolm exhaled, leaning back in his chair, but for the first time in a long time, the weight in his chest didn't feel like pressure. It felt like purpose. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about doing the right thing. And for the first time in his career, Malcolm Reed was about to bet everything on the people who made his company what it was. The boardroom was hushed, the kind of silence that felt sharp-edged with tension, thick with unspoken resistance. Malcolm presided at the head of the long glass table, his fingers steepled, eyes unwavering as he surveyed the faces around him. Men in crisp suits, women in sharp blazers, individuals who had spent years dissecting figures but had never once set foot in a warehouse, never clocked in for a back-to-back shift, never faced the grim choice between rent and food. Lisa sat beside him, her expression unreadable, but Malcolm knew her well enough to sense the calculated thought behind her eyes. She was prepared as always. Reports printed, spreadsheets color-coded, projections mapped out. Every conceivable argument against their proposal had already been meticulously dissected and countered. But that didn't guarantee an easy victory. Across the table, Daniel Grant, one of their longest-standing investors, cleared his throat, leaning back in his chair like a man who had already formed his unfavorable opinion. Malcolm, let me be clear. You're suggesting a sweeping wage increase, more benefits, a fund for emergency assistance, and you expect us to approve this? Why? Malcolm exhaled through his nose. Because it's the right thing to do. A beat of silence, then a scoff from someone to the right. Come on, Malcolm, Daniel said, shaking his head. We don't run a charity, we run a business. Our employees are already paid competitively for this industry. If we start handing out raises like candy, where does it end? And what do you think the shareholders will say when our profit margins take a hit? Malcolm's jaw tightened. He could feel the oppressive weight of the room, the skepticism so dense it was almost palpable. But he had anticipated this. He had spent the past week poring over numbers, enduring long meetings with Lisa, meticulously reviewing every possible rebuttal. This wasn't merely emotion. This was logic, this was strategy, this was the future. We run a logistics company, Malcolm said, his voice even but firm. We don't manufacture products, we don't develop new technology. We move things. And the only reason we do it better than anyone else is because of the people on the ground, the ones loading the trucks, driving through the night, pulling extra shifts just to keep this business running. They're not numbers on a spreadsheet, they're people. And right now they're being left behind. Lisa slid a report across the table. We've run the numbers, she said. Yes, this plan will incur upfront costs. But turnover rates? Those are decimating us faster than any wage increase ever could. The time and money we constantly spend on hiring and training is bleeding this company dry. Retention is the cornerstone of growth. If we invest in our employees now, they'll invest in us long term. Another board member, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, frowned at the report but didn't outright dismiss it. You're telling us this is about sustainability? It's about survival, Malcolm stated. You think competition is fierce now? Give it a few years. If we don't cultivate loyalty now, we're finished. We can either be the company people aspire to work for, or we can be the company people abandon the moment a better offer emerges. The room plunged into another uncomfortable silence. Malcolm could observe the gears turning, some already calculating the mental math, weighing risk against reward. Some would never be swayed, but a few were listening. Daniel folded his arms, his lips pressed into a thin line. And what if this doesn't work? What if all we do is lose money? Malcolm leaned forward, holding his gaze unperturbed. Then I take the loss personally. That commanded their attention. Lisa's head snapped towards him, but she remained silent for now. The rest of the board, however, murmured in low, surprised tones. Daniel narrowed his eyes. You're saying you'll cut your own salary? If that's what it takes, Malcolm said, and he meant every word. I built this company. If we fail, I bear the responsibility. But I'm telling you we won't. Because I believe in this. I believe in them. And if I'm willing to put my own paycheck on the line for it, then you had better start asking yourselves why you're not. Another silence. Then finally the woman with the silver hair, Catherine, one of their oldest investors, sighed and pushed the report back towards Lisa. I think, she said slowly, carefully, it's time we start thinking about more than just the next quarter. I vote yes. Lisa's fingers tapped once against the table, a subtle yet unmistakable sign of victory. One by one the votes accumulated, not unanimous, not without resistance, but enough to change everything. By the time the meeting concluded, Malcolm stepped out of the boardroom into the hallway, the weight in his chest finally dissipating. Lisa walked beside him, glancing up with a knowing look. When you said you were serious, she muttered, I didn't think you meant your own damn salary. Malcolm let out a low breath. It worked, didn't it? Lisa shook her head, but he caught the small smirk she attempted to conceal. Yeah, she admitted, it did. They paused near the elevators, the hum of the office filling the space around them. Outside the glass walls, employees went about their day, loading shipments, answering calls, keeping the company alive in ways the board would never fully grasp. Malcolm looked out over them, his jaw set, his conviction unwavering. It wasn't just about one woman anymore. It wasn't just about Naomi. It was about all of them. Every worker who had ever pulled a double shift, every driver who had ever missed a holiday, every person who had ever driven themselves into the ground just to scrape by. For years he had believed in hard work. He still did. But now he believed in something more profound. All right, Lisa said, crossing her arms. Now that we've got approval, who's telling the employees? Malcolm exhaled, rolling his shoulders back. I am. Lisa raised an eyebrow. You sure? This is going to be a shock. Yeah, Malcolm said, nodding, already stepping forward, already prepared for the battle ahead. And I want them to hear it from me. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.